back. This is the Community Radio Show on News Talk 990 WLEE, right here in Richmond, Virginia. So we're back in a conversation about the uprisings in the Middle East, and we have a caller on the line. Everybody's pointing to the screen like I don't see it flashing. Your mic's not. Just keep his mic off for the rest of this.
Is it on or off? I can hear I see the button. All right.
All right.
We'll go to line one.
Yes, line one. David, you're on.
David's on line one. Welcome to the Community Radio Show.
Hello.
Hey.
Good to hear you. Enjoy your show very much.
Wonderful.
Just wanted to bring up a point that seemed relevant. You talked about how there's a certain faction of the Islamic religion that is becoming militant to broaden its base politically, broaden its power base, and that's not unusual. I mean, we saw that in Christianity. Number of examples: the trials for heresy, the witch burnings, the Inquisition, the Holy Crusades. A lot of very non-Christian things in the name of a Christian God. So we do see this with religions trying to expand their power base, feeling threatened, feeling persecuted, and responding in a militant fashion.
Right. That's a very good point. I think the biggest thing is, just making sure that we're constantly, denouncing these things and trying to find a way to remove them from society, one way or the other. But yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. You're actually true. I mean, but the problem becomes is somehow, for some reason, when there's a difference between, if I can use the term, Islamic militancy and, let's say, the militancy that existed within, other religions, Christianity, for example, or the Spanish Inquisition. I think it's because it's that I don't agree with it. I don't think it's militancy is militancy, and throughout history, people have always used, like David, you've said, people have always used a religion to try to further their own objectives.
Right.
But the question is, and I'm not sure if you I'd love to hear what you think. Why is that Islamic militancy is treated differently than what we see historically? For example, the Christians blowing up abortion clinics.
Right, but I think one of the reasons we look at it differently is because so many times you've had a Christian nation. So you had a geographic entity. You had, the Royal British Empire. You had a Christian nation that had a Christian army behind it, or rather, the army was guided by the church. In this case, the Islamic movement. It's not a centralized. It's not a centralized geographic country. It's scattered. It's spread. So the only way they can have any sort of effective military operation is by terrorists, by guerrilla. They don't have an army that they can invade a country with.
That's a good point.
Very good point.
Thanks for listening. I'd definitely love to have you call back in the future.
Thank you much.
Thank you. That's a brilliant point. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
It is true.
No.
You did? You did. No, you didn't.
Thank you, David. That was great.
That's actually that's a very, very good point that he brought up. In
it
that
brings a whole different dynamic.
Historically, there was the tie between the Catholic Church and the ruling party at the time, or the state, and that doesn't exist within the Islamic world.
Right.
Al-Qaeda is not affiliated with a particular government
entity.
Right. It just has, and
it's definitely not backed by, a military or anything like that.
It just
it's totally different. Yeah.
It's like a gang.
Basically.
It's an inner city gang.
Yeah, it's more like a cartel.
Cartel, there you go.
Yeah.
True. Now, there's nothing fancy about it. This is not,
Nope. Is basically try to take over and influence any way that you can.
Right. And part of the problem, which I think we in the West, and particularly America, fail to recognize, in that, yes, you can always crush something militarily all the time. You can drop bombs, you can blast stuff. However, that does not solve the underlying problem of what is going on in the Middle East. I remember one of the best lines from a movie was, I don't know if you saw the movie Vendetta, where they're trying to shoot this the main character, and they ask him, "Why won't you die?" And he said, "Because I'm an idea, and ideas are bulletproof." Wow. And so, if you're unemployed, male in the Middle East somewhere, and you've gone to school and you cannot get a job, and you're just sitting away wasting your life, and here comes someone who's promising you the riches in the afterlife,
Right.
and that you're probably heartbroken too. A great, just tangential thing, a great study would be to find out all these people that join these movements, how many of them joined the movements because they had their heart broken by some girl, and all of a sudden they think that, life is over, and let me just go.
I wouldn't even want to know the answer to that, because if it comes out extremely, positive in one
How would it?
I would.
When do guys do the most? Under what circumstances do guys do the most extreme things?
I guess that would be one.
Is there any other? You're looking at me like I'm crazy. You want to? Go ahead, tell me. I'm looking at a new producer over here.
Now that you say that,
guys do the craziest things for whom? For what?
Family, people that they love, and it's not just this girl romance. I'm not big on that there, but I think over in the Middle East, what's heavier is seeing your family getting killed or tortured or persecuted or kidnapped. I think that is a more realistic, the more realistic scenario for what generally will motivate an extremist mentality. And that could be anywhere. That's here in America. That's, in the African continent, in the Middle East. When you've seen, your whole family cut down, when you're 7 or 8 or 9 years old, that can push you to do some very extreme things. And then when somebody gives you the opportunity, one big thing is to come into a structure that shows you love and some type of compassion, that brings you in, like, okay, you're one of us now. So you have that element that would drive that. Then you have we can, provide you with some type of sustenance or money or whatever it is. Then you have that motivation. And then we can get back at the people that destroyed your family or hurt your mother or your father or took away your sister. That is another extremely destructive motivation. And I think that's more of what we're seeing, and what we will be dealing with people that get sucked into extremist organizations outside of, of course, you always have the brainwashing part where, America's terrible or Western civilization is terrible for A, B, C, D, E,
Blame the great Satan.
Right, exactly. So
why you're wearing Levi's jeans.
So you have, those factors as well. But I got to disagree with you on my girl left me, Now, if she's blown to pieces, that's one thing. But that kind of falls into the category of just one of your loved ones, being, taken away or killed or something really bad.
How do you explain people in these movements that come from the upper crust of society? Take London, for example, the September 7th bombers,
okay.
I think, in the London subway.
Okay.
They were from a middle-class family. They weren't impoverished. They weren't starving, or they weren't, they were living in England, and they came from a let's say middle-class family, and they still decided to carry out that act. So I think I
don't think that accounts for the majority of who, when we say terrorists globally, that is not the demographic that primarily fills that position or that definition of when we say extreme terrorism. Okay, I think those are off cases. That's where you do get into maybe those different mental capacities that are accepting of implementing, a terrorist notions and terrorist acts, within themselves. But in general, they're not coming from middle class backgrounds and, or even first world countries for the most part.
I disagree. So, call in, tell us what you think. 788-0990, 877-953-3990. I think the overwhelming demographic of the people that join these types of movements may be from impoverished.
I think that's where the majority. Now, if you're looking at it from a tactical standpoint, I'm sure. Yeah, we already have heard about how, with the whole American infiltration, trying to get other different types of people in different standings, you know, in different statuses of wealth, to come into the ranks of these organizations to further promote it. But that's not the standard. And quite frankly, I don't think that's it's an effective route, because I don't, you know, I just feel like generally people, like you said, for people that come from a middle class standing, I think have a different outlook and view of the world as a whole, and don't see terrorism or anything close to it to be any type of effective lifestyle or effective way of living and trying to push an agenda. You know, so I don't think that's, you know, David.
David's back.
David is back.
We get 2 for 1 today. Let's go to
that's fine. Hey,
David?
we'll take it.
No, this is another David. Here.
Oh, man. That's all right.
Today's David.
Today's a day of Davids. All right. Welcome to the Community Radio Show. Thanks for calling.
Yeah. I just turned to your show. I heard y'all advertise on Jack, so I was just trying to listen. So I just come Johnny, come lady. But I'm listening to you. The last guy that gave that analysis was closer than I think you are. And what you also forget when you're talking about the so-called terrorists, okay, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And what I think that, and I'm an ex-military guy. I spent a few years in the military.
Okay,
I'm a black dude, 68 years old, so I was raised here in Richmond when it was segregated. And
gotcha.
Some of the times the white folks use Christianity for the Ku Klux Klan and various organizations to terrorize us and our ancestors. And go further is when you trying to you're talking about a little earlier that what's the first thing, one of the things that make guys mad is rejection by their girlfriend and stuff like that. I think that's so frivolous to put into this, because what I see that most Americans don't seem to understand, they are so right and righteous that they don't see the dirt that this country does. Because if I remember correctly, the United States just took down a whole country. And not only did they just took down a whole country, if you look at the history of America, we take Iran, for instance. America is so rabid against Iran, but if they go back to, they only want to go back to 1979 and look at Iran's history, when in 1954, the United States helped overthrow the legitimate government and install the Shah of Iran, and he ran rampant, and they just poured all the money, and they have backed all these dictators, going back to from the beginning of this country, all the dirt that they do, they're swept under the rug because Americans don't see the wrong. They're so righteous.
You're right. You're right, David. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Well, first of all, thanks for listening, first of all, to the Jack Gravely Show and deciding to call in.
Love
really
Jack.
appreciate it. Yeah, man.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. And when I said being critical, to me, you cannot get to the root of the problem if you don't look at some of your contribution to the problem. They're trying to analyze what the problem is. And to me, that's what Americans don't seem to do. You can't be so righteous that you just do dirt like the other guy said. They got their military power where they can go around the globe and do whatever that they want to do, and there's no consequences coming from them. Now, I understand Islam. I'm a Muslim. Okay, and I'm studying the Quran, trying to understand it, but I was raised in Christianity. Okay, and tried to study the Bible to get an understanding, but it never gave me the peace that I have. And so what I'm looking at is the people that's not really literate have a misunderstanding of the Quran and what it entails. But like the brother was saying before, when you see your whole family wiped out, when you are under the thumb of these dictators that's backed by Western power, when you looked at Western power, they have raped your countries, corrupt your leaders. What do you expect them to do?
Let me get a word in that, David. Yeah, thanks. I agree with you. It's not as simple as saying that these people are this way. For example, I grew up in California, and the biggest problem there was this major fighting between the Crips and the Bloods in Los Angeles. And this notion that, if you're a black male, that somehow genetically you just grow up and you just join a gang. No, that's just rubbish. And you have to understand, you have to look at it from a totality of what the problems are. And you're actually correct in that as to use the phrase of Madeleine Albright, it's a multifaceted issue in that there are multiple players and multiple people that have their hands in the pot to create the conditions that.
Well, now that you said that, now I want to bring something up because I gotta agree with David. Okay,
you get it. Okay,
because what time is it? Because we're okay. This is what I want to say. Okay, I gotta agree with David, and sometimes it's kind of difficult because it's a lot of things that you just can't prove to a certain degree in terms of what the country does. Like even you were talking about the gang issue out in California. Now, if you precede that time, what you're dealing with, and this is, some people will confirm and say, yes, this did happen. Other people say, it's speculation, maybe so. Where you had a government influence of putting cocaine, crack into the communities,
right,
putting weapons into leaving container cars. I don't know, man. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, you're gonna create an environment that is going to foster that mentality, the street mentality, the gang mentality, the thug mentality, and that's what you're going to grow. And then you have this other problem. But the question is, is what is the I guess the end result of that? The end result for that was, a lot of people would say, was to keep black people in a more impoverished state. Now, and if you look at what other countries are dealing with, you have the aspects of the political hitman. When that doesn't work, you have the jackals. Then you have the military force. And that's to either, as a country, you're going to give America or Western civilization what they want, or we're going to destroy you from the inside out.
Right. Basically, so, it's not as simple. It's not a soundbite. They hate us.
Right. It's
black
really,
kids don't grow up coming out of the womb joining a gang.
Right. That is true. It's definitely
I hear the music. The music.
I hear the music too. Okay, we got
on the line.
Go ahead. We got 30 seconds. We got Fatima on the line. We're going to bring her back on. She's been on the I believe the Obama campaign trail.
I believe so. Yes.
In a sense.
Yes.
And we'll be back in
our own celebrity.
There we go. We're getting big here.
I know. Listen to the Comedian Radio Show on WLEE News Talk 990, number 788-0990.
Or 1-877-953-3990.